Right, welcome to another episode of the P10 show, the isolation series, where we talk and tell the stories of a number of a variety of different guests. Today, I'm very excited to be joined by an old friend, a kind of training partner way back in the day, and then who has gone on to achieve far more in CrossFit than I would ever have dreamed of. Mike Catris is the owner of Catris Nutrition. He is a coach on the athlete program, as well as, are you team captain? Would you call yourself that? Is that a fair title to give you?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, captain and coach.
Captain and coach of the athlete program team that have represented, so strongly at Filthy 150, the Norwegian CrossFit Championships as well, and can have her in and amongst these kind of teams vying for the spot at the CrossFit Games, which is super, super exciting. Are you all well?
Yeah, really good. Yeah, is it weird to say I'm kind of enjoying the whole lockdown thing? I just got a bit of a routine going and got my own little space and training hard and eating well and sleeping well, and I'm good actually.
What does when you say what does training kind of look like? Are you training? Do you have access to a gym? Are you at home? How's it all looking?
So I've had a garage gym for a couple of years now. Something that, as previously as an affiliate owner, I struggled to train as hard and as often as I wanted to in the gym when you work. That's your place of work, right? So everybody's grabbing you, or can you just have a look at this, or can you fix the toilet or whatever. So it's something I've built up over the years. Was a pretty well stacked out garage gym, which I'm lucky for now, I guess, because not many people are in that position. So it's all at home. It's all in the garage. I've got pretty much everything I need except for gymnastics wise. I couldn't do an awful lot of pull-ups, toes to bar, muscle ups, that sort of thing. So I built myself a rig, an outdoor rig, out of some timber and a bit of handrail and tubing.
Nice. Particularly the notion of, particularly both of us being box owners, I would love to at some point, I'd love to kind of talk through how your relationship with CrossFit kind of has developed over that particular time. Before we get into that, how did you get into CrossFit? What's your training background? And when did it all begin?
So I was, as a kid, I was into every sport there was. I played everything, anything that got me out of school and got me onto a field, and get me dirty. That was for me. So I played representative rugby, and I boxed for Wales as a junior, right the way up until youth levels, and got capped at for Wales in rugby at youth level and stuff like that as well. And I went on to play semi-professional, sort of it's not really professional, but sort of professional in brackets, in inverted commas, rugby, sort of regional academy contracts and that sort of stuff. So that was my background really. I was a rugby player first and foremost, but I always enjoyed the strength and conditioning side of things. I always enjoyed the actual training, the lifting weights and the pre-season fitness and stuff. And actually, Andy Edwards, who I think was on your show a week or two ago, who owns Dragon CrossFit, was a strength and conditioning coach for the Glamorgan Wanderers when I was involved with those for a season. So I started training down at Dragon CrossFit then, purely from a rugby point of view, just from for the fact that we had a free membership there through the rugby club. And that season was actually my last season. I had a double eye socket fracture from a clash of heads. That it was my third or fourth concussion in the space of 3 or 4 months. And back then they didn't have the protocols they have now, but pretty much got told by the neurologist to for lack of a better pun, knock it on the head. And I was training in a CrossFit gym at the time, and I was just like, well, this seems pretty cool. I couldn't lift anything heavy for 12 weeks because of the pressure behind my eye, and I was like, well, they're not lifting anything heavy. I'll just give that a go and see what it's like. And I never really looked back, to be honest.
Amazing. And at what point, so how did you then transfer into the kind of the coaching side of it?
So when I was in uni, I did my reps and my PT level 3 and level 4 and all that sort of stuff for pocket money. So I was always interested in that side of things. Like I said, I enjoyed the physical training side of things in rugby as well. So I was a PT by trade, as well as a nutritionist and a couple of other bits of stuff that I sort of took interest in. And that sort of then edged me directly. As soon as that was the sort of training I was doing, then it just made sense for me to sort of look a little bit deeper into the coaching side of, from CrossFit point of view, really.
And then parallel to this kind of coaching career, where did the kind of the more competitive side, did it kind of just creep up on you, or was it something you're like, no, I'm gonna kind of
I think it was probably more that I jumped straight into the competitive side of things, really, because I'm a competitive person by nature. But I think it automatically replaced rugby. Was such a big part of my life, and it was something that, you know, from 8 years old, I wanted to be a professional rugby player and play for Wales. You know, up until I was 23, 24 when this happened. I sort of knew by then that I probably wasn't going to reach the pinnacle of the sport, but I was still, you know, knocking on that door and trying to be at the best level I could have been. And suddenly sort of doing that for 16 odd years, to then get a little bit of a kick up the arse and just say, well, look, you can't do that anymore. It had a massive void. So I needed to replace that with something competitive pretty quickly. So as soon as I saw that CrossFit could be that for me, then that's what I decided to do, really.
And what was, I mean, because particularly a lot of the listeners here, there will be those that will be looking at competitions and will be kind of maybe quite new, particularly some of, like you say, a lot of the guys at P10, the guys that host this show. There'll be people who are fairly new to CrossFit who and are definitely looking at that side of competing. What was your kind of thinking did you kind of wait until you were kind of, I want to be this level and I want to kind of be well established, or did you just get game time?
It's a totally different sport now than what it was when I started. I mean, you know, we're talking 2012 was my first competition. And back then, as much as, you know, it was starting to become something, you know, if you could lift a barbell, I was naturally, I'd done a lot of strength work through rugby. I'd done a lot of power output stuff through rugby. So I was naturally powerful, strong compared to the CrossFit guys, and I struggled with more engine stuff. So I could go to a competition. I went to a competition having only done CrossFit for a couple of months and did fine, because there was stuff that I was very good at compared to even some very good competitors. But then the stuff that I was bad at, I was awful at. So I was never going to win anything until I fixed all of those sort of weaknesses. So I guess if you're looking to get into CrossFit now, I'd probably into competitive CrossFit, I should say. Sorry. Now, I think that you probably do need to take a more broad approach and look at what your weaknesses are, because the entry level is so much higher than it was when we started.
Yeah. What I will just add on to that is that there does seem to be a certain accessibility around competitions, though. There does seem to be something for everyone. Do you kind of think, what from your experience, like the amount of time that you've had on the competition floor is immense. How much of that is of value, do you think, in terms of, particularly even now, finding that balance between a periodized season versus just experience of a weekend and a game time weekend, and kind of learning the ropes of kind of undulating, like letting your body come down and then ramping it back up and all this kind of stuff? What's the kind of relationship there?
Yeah, for sure. I think like It's different. Like if you come from a sporting background, you sort of understand competing. So like, we used to do sevens tournaments, for instance, is a quite a good relationship to a CrossFit competition in my head, where, you've got to work really hard for 14, 15 minutes, really, really hard. And then you might not have to do anything for an hour or two. And then you've got to go and do it again. So you need to learn how to fuel. You need to learn how to hype up and then come back down, warm up, cool down, and all that other stuff as efficiently as possible. And if you haven't done any of that, then the best way to do that is to experience it yourself and learn yourself, especially from a nutrition point of view. One of the things that I see happening, the biggest pitfalls that I see in competitions, is people just under fueling and eating the wrong stuff at the wrong times, or not eating anything at all. And you can see it certainly in multi-day competitions, 2-3 day competitions, that people do start to plummet and crash. And the people that do dial in and have got that experience from the recovery side of things tend to perform better as the competitions sort of go on in day 2 and day 3. So I think, that experience is really important. And when I first started, I think 2015 was probably one year that sticks out in my head. I'm sure I did 14 or 15 competitions in 2015.
Oh, wow.
Like I just said yes to everything.
Yeah.
And a lot of those were team competitions, which I prefer, but they're slightly lower volume in terms of you don't have as much work per workout necessarily. Depends on the comp.
Yeah.
But we did tons and tons of competing that year, and I learned so much in a season, if you like, that still helps me now.
I think that's and I think of this particularly coming from the Olympic weightlifting work that I've done. Like, we've pinpointed years with certain athletes where we've said, look, we are going to just compete. Like, there is so much value in just the game day experience, like you say, particularly
Sure. Yeah.
the notion of, like I say, particularly CrossFit as a multi-day, usually a multi-day, even the more kind of beginner competitions, learning the kind of the nutrition, and then I can think of just general body management as well. I can remember just doing a basic Inferno competition and just feeling so trash, just because my management of just kind of cool down and all the rest of it in between workouts was just horrendous. So learning that, but then understanding that there is some compromise to that. Like, if you're competing 10 plus times in a year, that's so many weekends that you're just missing out of just training, which again,
and you're just broken for the next 4 or 5 days minimum after a competition. Even if you don't feel that bad, you get that sort of CNS dump and everything feels heavy and everything, the motivation starts to dip a little as well. Yeah. So 100% agree. And people aren't used to going that hard either. People think they train hard, and then, when you put them on a competition floor, that's when you see people, like, if anyone's seen the clip of me crossing the line in Filthy 150 after the worm workout, where I literally look like somebody just tasered me. Like, I don't look like that in training sessions.
No.
Like, that, you don't go that hard unless there's points or places at the games or stuff like that. And going that 1 or 2% further does take that much more of a toll on your body in terms of recovery.
Absolutely. It's that workout that you're referring to was just gross. It was just absolutely gross. Particularly the notion of some of the competitions and the specifics of them will definitely come across. As I said, one of the things, so you were part owner of Ion Strength Conditioning in North Cardiff, which I would just say is a fantastic box. It's a fantastic space.
Thank you.
And how was that? And I'm very interested in terms of your relationship with training, your relationship with competing. How did being a coach and a box owner impact that?
It had to. The priority was building the best gym in the country, or the best gym that we could possibly build, right? So there's times where training had to take a back seat and competing had to take a back seat, because we had to make sure that the gym was performing as well as we wanted it to. And I think I look back at my time at Ion and with Rob and with the team with nothing but fondness. Like, I had a great experience. I enjoyed everything that we built together, and I think that, you know, I'm incredibly proud of the facility itself, but also the culture and the vibe. That everything was just exactly how I wanted it to be. And it was just unfortunate that I had so much on my plate that something had to give, really. And unfortunately, in terms of being a gym owner, I was sort of, Rob was or is the head strength and conditioning coach for Cardiff Blues. So the time that he could actually be at the gym was limited by his other job, whereas the time that I could be at the gym wasn't as limited. So I spent sometimes, you know, north of 60 hours a week in that gym. And I was always there and constantly almost feeling guilty if I wasn't doing something productive in the gym, and that was taking its toll on me in terms of my other projects. And the one project that had the most time dedicated to it was that, so it freed up the most time for everything else if I stepped away from it, unfortunately.
And then, so today you are part of the athlete program coaching team.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of what's that? Do you want to just talk us through that setup, what that looks like in terms of just a general program that you offer to everyone?
Yeah, so the athlete program was something that I used to do my own competitive programming, where I used to program for myself and a couple of other guys, and we used to call it Moo Fit because my nickname was Moo, and it's just a bit of a joke thing. And we went to the European Championships one year, 2015, 16, maybe. I think I won it in 2015. And I had 5 or 6 athletes there, and all of us made the finals. And I remember Carl Saville, who runs the European Championships and runs the athlete program, sort of raising a few eyebrows and just being like, wow, like, how many people do you coach? And I was like, this is it, like these 6 people. And he's like, and all of them have got to the final. I was like, yeah, you know, we've done pretty well. And that a year later, he dropped me a message and he was like, oh, are you still programming? I was like, yeah. And he was like, would you be interested in taking over as a head coach for the athlete program? Because at that time they just finished a contract with Scott Panchek, who was coaching there and built the program up, and they had a good little following. And Scott was starting to do some stuff over in the States as well, which sort of conflicted. He wanted to do his own thing over there, so he decided to step back from the athlete program, and I sort of filled those boots, really. And it started out, I just offered a generic CrossFit competitors program that you could follow in your gym, and it was basically what I did to begin with, and it's in the last 2 years adapted massively. We now do a 1-a-day program. We do the elite program, which is two training sessions a day. We do a Olympic weightlifting specific program, a conditioning program, a gymnastics program. So we've got a good core group of coaches and programmers, sort of headed up by myself, that come together and get some good ideas on paper and provide that for a monthly subscription.
Amazing. Well, actually, one of he's actually watching right now. One of the coaches at P10, Jamie Lowry. Yeah, so he is always wearing the t-shirt in the gym, and is kind of
competed at Sid for us.
He did indeed, yeah. That he did indeed, yeah, and is always kind of your guy's biggest fan in that sense. So yeah, it is certainly, particularly in and amongst the P10 culture, it is well known because of Jamie flying the flag.
Cool.
I'm actually been following it since the lockdown started as well.
Yeah, so the home workouts, or
no, just the complete program, is it?
Cool, yeah, the 1-a-day.
Yeah. So
how are you finding it?
Yeah, good. I'm enjoying it. It's just like you say, it's got everything.
Yeah.
Within so one of the things, because I want to touch upon, because I think about the time when we first kind of crossed paths, and we started CrossFit at a very similar time. And if you go back to, and you touched upon it in terms of what you look to build at Ion as well, and in terms of the role of head coach within what is a kind of a virtual program, I think particularly one of the things that we had at DC back in 2012 was that idea of amazing culture. There was a great group of guys that, like I say, I always say that was one of my most effective methods of time of training, just because like everyone was squatting heavier than me. And then obviously that then proceeded to the guys that came with you with Ion and stuff like that. We don't underestimate the power of culture and environment. How do you kind of manage that or factor that in? Do you even like factor that in terms of your role as a coach in a more virtual sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important. Like, it is harder from a virtual standpoint. Obviously, you're not there. You're not overlooking everything, so you can't things like standards and all that sort of stuff. But I think that it's important how you put things across. Like, the one thing that we've got with the athlete program is the Facebook group for all of the members, which is incredibly interactive. People are posting stuff on there, every hour of every day. Because it is a global program, although it is mainly UK based, but there's people posting, videos, asking for feedback, asking for tips, and every single one of the coaches are always there to try and help and improve people. And we had an athlete program training day not long before lockdown, where at Ion, where all of the coaches came, and I sort of presented to them. And one of the big things that we talked about was culture. Was, this is how we want to grow this brand and how we want the athlete program to look. And the most important thing is that the people that are paying for this program, the athletes, it's about them. It's not about anybody else. And it's about the results that, we want to make them better and give them what they want, so that they're happier, healthier, fitter, stronger, whatever it is that they're coming in to try and be.
Absolutely. And like I say, particularly for the listeners there, I think that the notion of any program is really, really important, but creating, albeit like having seen and followed, we see it in the likes of Jamie, but then also seeing all the activity on social media, creating little sub communities within, whether it's within the gym, or creating sub communities, whether it's online, and having that kind of idea of accountability is absolutely huge. No matter,
Sure.
like the bigger the better in that sense. And then the power of having a coach as well, I think is absolutely massive, absolutely massive.
It's accountability, right?
Yeah, 100%. With that in mind, particularly within the situation at the moment, how's training gone at the moment? Is it going well? Like I say, we touched upon it at the top of the show, but in a kind of a more isolated environment and taking a step away from the gym.
Yeah, I think I'm lucky, I guess, to the fact that I've often trained alone over the years. Like, I've always had people that I've trained with, or that have trained with me, I should say, but I've never had a single one or two training partners that I've consistently trained with, or a group of people. It's always been, I'm training now, and if you want to join in and train with me, then feel free to join in and train with me, sort of thing. Mainly because when I've done that in the past, probably the last consistent proper training partner I had was Tommy Biz back in 2015 regional training year, because people can't hack the volume, the consistency more than anything, that I've done, because I've been doing it for so long to a certain degree. So I'd rather be in a case where I have 3 or 4 training partners that I maybe see once a week each, and then train on my own 5 or 6 times a week, and then almost relying and using that as a crutch and being like, oh, I'm going to train with this guy every single day, and then as soon as he cancels, straight away that's your excuse to cancel. So yeah, I found it fine. The first week going into isolation was tough, because we had a couple of competitions lined up and we didn't know if they were going to go ahead or not, or so motivation, simply because I didn't know where to direct that training, wasn't on point. And then pretty much bang on day 7, I was like, well, look, just focus on what you can control, which is your effort, your output, and what you want to get better at, and that set yourself some goals, and that's what I did.
I have to say, like, because there are very similar kind of parallels that run within both of our lives, and your kind of ability to be consistent through over the past 8, 9 years or whatever is just immense. And what do you think, like, how are you so consistent? What are the kind of the key things that you have put in place that have led to this kind of level of consistency that you've displayed?
To be honest, like, from a purely mental health point of view, I think I wouldn't want to be around myself if I didn't train. I feel like it's such an important part of my life in terms of allowing me to release some stress, allowing me to have some control over my own life, so I can, I can control my food, I can control my effort, I can control my programming, I can control that side of things. And there's so many things outside of that I can't control. And I'm a bit of a control freak, obviously, and I like to. I think that it's never ever been a motivation thing to train. For me, it's only ever been a motivation for what I'm training for. So every single day, I've known myself for the last, since I was probably 14 when I first started training. I've probably done some sort of physical activity. I probably haven't taken more than 3 days off in a row in 15 years, 16 years. Even when injured, I'll do something. It'll be, I can do this, so I'll do that. Or I'll have a little mope about, when I snapped my ankle in 2014 in the Open.
Yeah.
And I was like, I came in the next day and I was training. I was like, well, cool, time to get a new bench press record for the next 6 weeks or whatever it was. It's just like, so I don't know. I think it's probably the way I was brought up. I think my dad's very competitive in nature, but also a very hardworking man. And he's always been somebody that is a classic type A sort of personality, wants to achieve, and it's always looking on to the next thing. It's always like, okay, cool, I've done pretty well at that. Now I want to do better. And if you win it, then what's next? And so on,
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because obviously somewhat you've experienced regionals and you've experienced the new format. What's the difference? Better, same, better, worse? Does it matter?
Different. Do you know what? I think that the regionals was amazing. I was lucky enough to go there twice, and missed out the 1 year with injury, and it was a great experience both times. Both totally different, but really, really great experience. And it was the pinnacle of the sport at that time for most people. Very few people could get to the games back then. It was incredibly tough in either teams or in individuals, and because it was you all came from the same gym, the team side of things was a bit different as well, in terms of the community and everything else behind you. That was a really, really cool experience, and something that I'm very glad that I got to do multiple times. I personally think that the standard has increased massively since things have changed at sanctional level, simply because you've opened up that you're no longer regionalized. So we're competing against individuals and teams from all over the world, from the States, from Australia, from Europe, from South Africa, from Middle East, wherever. And that has raised the bar in terms of the sport itself, in terms of the performances you're seeing from individuals and teams. And I think that the fact that I was able to bring a group of individuals together that I coached and trained with and competed against, and build a team that I would say are as tightly knit, if not more tightly knit, than the teams that we had at regionals, is probably as big an achievement as anything I've done, in terms of that's the reason we're a good team. It's because we've got that team feeling, rather than it just being 4 really good athletes or 3 really good athletes and me.
How do you, because particularly knowing the individuals that you've got, and having trained with all of them bar one, particularly the team out in Norway, like I said, they are really outstanding individuals. How do you develop that kind of team cohesion between the four of you?
So the start of the season, back to 2019 when we did strength and depth, we came second in strength. We'd done strength and depth came second, Filthy 150 came second, Pandaland came second, and Norway came second. So 4 out of 4. We did strength in depth back in 2019, but it was the early season.
Yeah.
And leading into the next, we did really well. We got together and had a weekend together the weekend before the comp where I did a load of team building stuff. We went bowling. We, got to know each other, had a couple of beers and trained pretty hard, but just did a lot of teamwork stuff, lots of synchro stuff, lots of learning how each other moves, see who works better with who and why, who's going to do the talking and why, and what the tactics are going to be, and who's going to be the handbrake for this workout. Okay, so we need to go at their pace and all that other good stuff, and learned a lot from that experience. And we decided going into the 2020 season that we really wanted to give that a good go, in terms of qualifying with Charlotte, Hannah, Ali, and myself, the team that we took to Filthy 150. And we had 2 good training camps leading into that, doing the same thing, building that team spirit, and learning each other's movements. Unfortunately, Ali had work commitments then where they've just bought their facility for their gym. And I was lucky enough to know Alec as well as I do, and called him for a favor literally the week before we went to China and said, do you fancy a trip? And he was like, cool, yeah, let's go. And we hadn't trained together at all before we went to China, but we know each other so well that he just slotted in, and he's such a talented athlete. He just slotted in and picked it up, like clockwork. And we've just built on that feeling from then, really.
Yeah, well, I didn't realize it was that soon with Alec in particular. I mean, his movement is fantastic anyway. So in terms of the actual experiences, like you say, China, Norway, Filthy 150 in particular, what's the kind of, as experiences in terms of the actual competitions, are they all, because obviously, are they all very similar, or are they different vibes? Like if you talk us through those?
Yeah, completely different. And I think that's probably the cool thing. One of the coolest things about the whole sanctional season is that whereas with CrossFit regionals, the whole point of them was to make them as similar and fair a test across all the regions. So it was almost sterile in that regard, that everything was exactly the same workouts and exactly the same setup and the same format and all that other stuff, which is great in terms of it being a fair test across the regions. But from the sanctional point of view, what you're allowing these competitions to do is put their own stamp on it. So the fact that Filthy 150 was at Punchdown Racecourse, which is such an amazing venue, and we got to run outside and run around the racecourse, and jumped and doing legless rope climbs outside in the Irish countryside and running back in. We got to do a trail run up a ski slope in Norway, and a 5K trail run running up a ski slope and across a cross-country ski. I'll never forget that we couldn't do that anywhere else in the world. China is the most mental place I've ever been in my life. It's absolutely insane. And it's just like these experiences in themselves are completely different, just because of where the venue is, who's running the competition, who's programming things, the teams that you're competing against. They're all completely standalone experiences, and they're all great.
Do you have a favorite?
I think that Filthy 150 is the best CrossFit competition I've ever done, in terms of the whole thing. In terms of the programming, I thought was outstanding. The use of the venue, I thought, was amazing. The warm-up area, everything was just, they went above and beyond, and I thought it was just so well organized, and I thought it was a fantastic competition. China, you could tell they had at the comp, you could tell they hadn't done something at that scale before, because they made a lot of mistakes, but they learned a lot as they did it as well. It was a great experience, but from a CrossFit competition side of things, it was no no different to a lot of generic normal CrossFit comps that you would have done yourself.
Yeah.
Norway was fantastic as well in terms of the venue. It's the most amazing venue I've ever. It's a smaller venue, but the most amazing place I've ever done a CrossFit competition. And that run was like probably, as much as you know I hate running, was probably one of my favorite moments in a CrossFit comp.
Oh wow.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely being able to kind of plan those things and having that kind of control over your season. I can imagine is just something really quite special, and pick and choose where you want to go in the world, basically. So I suppose the more difficult question is, particularly if you look at like Filthy 150 and, well, in particular, but some of the others, kind of you had that games place in your hands. Like in your mind, what's needed to go from second to winning?
It's hard. I think if you when we looked at the programming for Filthy 150, the one thing that we've got as a group in terms of the team, and I sort of try and lead this from the front because it's normally me that's the limiting factor on the workouts. I'm probably the least talented of the four of us. Is honesty about what we think we can achieve in those workouts, and honesty in terms of the effort that we put into those workouts. And if we go out and we do exactly what we set out to do, and we do it as well as we possibly can, and we come second, fair fucking play to the team that beats us.
Yeah.
Because we've done literally the best that we can do. And I think the one with Filthy 150, it was hard because it was such a big event in terms of the media and stuff. And it was so like, I got so many messages, or we as a team got so many messages that weekend because it was so well broadcast. And we were kind of like the underdogs that they invited 4 teams that were super teams, and we were in the lead and nobody had heard of us and all this sort of stuff. But the reality of the situation was, if you looked at the workouts on day 3 and they had been on day 1, we'd have probably gone in 7th place, and we'd have been over the moon to climb up to second by the end of the weekend. Yeah. It's just that they weren't the best workouts for us. And we burnt some bridges as well on that last day because we were in the position we were in, and we were like, hey, we've got nothing to lose, let's go for it. So we changed the game plans a little bit, and we're a little bit more reckless because of that. Norway was different because it was so close neck and neck the whole way. It was literally, we won the event, they won the event, we won the event, they won the event, and we were either second or third in everything like the whole weekend, and so were they, and it was so tight. And it was just literally like, if there'd been one more event, we could have done it. If there'd been, that had been a snatch instead of a click or whatever. That was as in terms of a competition, it was like a Rocky Balboa heavyweight blow for blow style comp, which was again such a strange thing, because you come off that floor being that close to achieving something that you really want. And genuinely, I was speaking to Alec about it in the stands with a pizza and a beer, and we weren't disappointed. We weren't disappointed in our effort. We weren't disappointed in everything that we did. We were really proud of our performances, and it was just literally a matter of, cool, on to the next one. Because if we repeat those performances, we'll get there in our heads. Anyway.
Well, it comes down to what you're saying about your idea of consistency in the sense of you are literally just controlling what you can control. And like I say, particularly the ones that, well, to be honest, I've followed you guys at the Filthy 150 and in China and in Norway, and just whilst you guys were fantastic, so with the other teams, and you just have
legit teams,
Yeah, exactly. And it's not like
not like we got beaten by ourselves, or we messed anything up, or they were great teams that put in great performances all weekend. They deserve their spots,
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, like I say, just anyone listening to this can just certainly take that on board and just say, well, just control what you can control, and then the outcome is just the outcome.
Absolutely.
So what's particularly, this is a really weird time. Obviously the game's up in the air in itself. And then how do you manage a time like this in terms of plans, any element of periodization or anything like that? What's your kind of take on that?
It's been it's changed week by week because what we're learning about what's going to happen and lockdown in different countries, and is the game's going to go ahead and all that other stuff. So initially when we went into lockdown, it was assumed everything was postponed, not cancelled. So it was like, it looked as though there might have been a chance of getting some more sanctionals done by June, and the games might well have gone ahead. So it was okay, head on. That's potentially when we need to be looking to be our best, is around that June time. Cool, we can do that. Then things started cancelling. Now it looks like the games may go ahead just for individuals only, no teams, because there's not going to be any masters or teams, definitely. So I've almost reserved my headspace for that, and it's like, okay, cool, we're on to next season already. In which case, the next thing on the calendar is going to be the Open in October, which isn't necessarily a focus for us because we just need to qualify. So as long as we do well enough to qualify, it's then for us a matter of peaking for whichever competitions we decide to do. The problem being that obviously dates haven't been released for anything yet in terms of the 2021 season. So we're just going to sort of go on the historical sort of side of things and assume that Filthy 150 will be in November, that China will be in December, and Dubai will be in December, and whatever, and just do what we did last year, which is, on paper, we're going to target 4 competitions that are at least 8 weeks apart, so that we can have a proper taper off, get a good training cycle done beforehand, and then peak leading into it. Ideally 10 weeks between, so that we've got the best opportunity to do that, and obviously financially and geographically, depending on where they're at, and if it makes sense for us to do that.
What do you just look at the kind of the competitions in terms of, I know we don't exactly know the details, but are you in a kind of mindset where you're like, no, let's just stick with what we know. We know what Filthy 150, we know Norway, obviously the logistics of kind of being in and around Europe? Or do you think, actually, I wouldn't mind going to Miami, or I wouldn't mind going to Dubai? What's your kind of take on that?
No, so the next 2 we had lined up were Lowlands, more from a financial side of things. It was easiest to get to,
Yeah.
but we were going to go to Egypt.
Oh, nice.
So that was on our cards. So we qualified and looking to go out there. So I've got no problem going anywhere. It's a matter of financially, if we can do that with sponsorship or whatever. And does it make sense in terms of where we're at in the season? Are we all fit and healthy, and we all good to go for that date? I'd rather us go to Brazil 2 weeks later than trying to hold a peak for an extra 2 weeks and feeling flat as a pancake going to London.
Yeah. I mean, I can definitely see that. And like I say, it provides it's kind of weighing up the balance, isn't it? Between kind of just like being competitive and then just going for like, oh, that's quite a cool place to go to, and just being really, really smart about it. Because the draw is definitely there. It's definitely.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we qualified for Sid, and as soon as they announced that Mayhem were doing it, Norway was 2 weeks later, and we were just like, well, why would I don't want to go and come second place?
Yeah.
Albeit that's all I've done. All we've done is got to come second place. But it's like I don't go to competitions to make up the numbers. Like I've never entered a competition in my entire life not thinking I can win it.
Yeah, I suppose that's a really good point, because obviously we know, Rich Fronin and CrossFit Mayhem and obviously some of the other teams. How much do you look at their schedules and kind of just mirror off that?
Other than the fact that obviously they were invited to Strength in Depth, like there was 4 teams invited to Filthy 150, and that was annoying from my point of view, because we'd seen the qualifiers, we knew where we were at, and ironically, a team that beat us were a team that qualified, not invited.
Yeah.
But it was a matter of like, if you know who you're up against, that's not a problem. And people were like, oh yeah, but you get to compete against Rich Fronin. And I was like, yeah, that'd be cool, but I'd rather compete against him in Madison.
Yeah.
And I'd rather compete against him knowing that I'm going there to try and beat him, having had 6 months extra training for it, rather than whatever. So yeah, I mean, you're gonna have a look at stuff like that. But if we'd entered and we saw that they had entered and they qualified, not a problem. But it was the fact that it was a we'd already qualified and then they were invited, and we were just a bit like, yeah, okay. And that's not a slight, like, it was great for the event and it was awesome to watch, and it was great. I went and coached that weekend and it was a cool experience in itself. It's just a matter as it didn't make sense for us with a potential for us to go and win, hopefully, Norway, which was a couple of weeks later. It was like, well, why would we, potentially jeopardize that?
No, absolutely. Interesting. I suppose that there's two kind of things that I'd love to kind of still ask you about. Is why, because like you've got, as we touched about, like, forgive me if I'm wrong, but you've got like a 125, 27 snatch. Is that right?
Yeah, 127.5. Yeah.
Obviously, the half matters, and then
The half is
like,
the important one.
Yeah, of course. And you've got like some really great numbers, and well, to be honest, all the athletes who compete at a team level sanctionals are incredible athletes in their own right. But why do you go team versus going individual? What's the draw? Because you could hold your own, like.
Yeah, I could go. I think I could probably qualify as an individual and make up the numbers and do okay, and be a mid-table individual and get some cool experiences and lots of sponsors and Instagram followers and all that other fun stuff. But to be perfectly honest, I genuinely enjoy team more. I find it so much easier to put myself in the pit when I'm doing it for 3 other people. Whereas for myself, I mean, the last individual comp I did, I think, was European champs last year, and I came 7th maybe. And I remember I qualified in like the 90s because I was in Hawaii for the qualifiers for my best mate's wedding that I was best man for. And I had to go and do one of the qualifiers basically in what was like somebody's front room that was affiliated in Hawaii, hungover as hell the day after a stag do. And I was like, I didn't even think I'd qualified, which was like, oh God, this is embarrassing. And then I got like qualified like 87th or something. So I went into it in the bottom heat of every comp, of every workout, and sort of came in the top 1 or 2 in each that heat every single time, which was quite good fun.
Yeah.
And I made it into the final, but because I was always setting scores for people to beat in the later heats, I made it into the final and I was like 7th or 8th, whatever it was, going into the final. I couldn't have done any better. And if we had been in a team in that situation, I'd have gone out and tried to win the final. And going out as an individual, I was just like, cool, this is fun. I'm just walked around and had a little trot and like smiled for the camera. It was just like, it was like, I've done my bit. Get into the final was fun, And I just think like I enjoy team stuff in terms of the captaincy side of things, the strategy side of things, the leadership side of things. I think I offer more from that side of things almost than I do as an athlete. I think I'm an okay, good, solid athlete. I haven't got too many weaknesses, haven't got too many amazing strengths, but I'm very good at the in between the ears stuff. And I think that transfers across more in teams than it does in individuals.
Yeah, it's definitely. Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. What would you, just out of interest, what would you say your kind of biggest strength is in terms of area of CrossFit? Is it kind of the barbell stuff? Is it the single modality stuff, machines?
Probably high power output stuff. So sprints, like real short, sharp, sub 90-second anything really. Like if I remember we had to do a workout, like a tester I did for Mike Fitzgerald, which was 15 bar facing burpees, 1 round of DT at 90 kilos, 15 bar facing burpees for time. And I remember sending him a score back. I can't remember what it was, but it was something daft. And I remember sending him the score back and he was like, no, you had to do 15 bar facing burpees at the end as well. And I was like, no, I did. And he was like, Jesus Christ, like that's a good score, like for individual games level athletes, good score. So it's like that sort of just switch off and go mental for 90 seconds sort of stuff is probably the stuff that I'm best at. And then it's heavy lifting, I guess.
How much aerobic capacity stuff do you do? Like longer single modality stuff?
Everything, every day. It's all I do. It's it's like I don't like being bad at stuff. So that's something that, since obviously you've known me for a very long time, I was always the big, strong, unfit guy that got away with it because I was big and strong and I could do the skills, I could do the gymnastic stuff and all that other stuff. So I sort of got away with it with probably subpar, certainly at that competitive high level, subpar aerobic fitness. I spend hours and hours and hours on a rower or bike or a ski rig now, which is fine. Listen to podcasts and listen to you talking to people.
Yes. The what does just out of interest, like how do you kind of structure that? Do you have, like, in the sense of, is it more EMOM style? Do you do longer stints in terms of, do you do it at certain paces?
Yeah, so it depends on where I'm at in the season, but it'll tend to be most basic sort of template that I'll do will be anything between 6 to 40 minute long stints. So, but it'll always accumulate a minimum of 35 minutes of actual work, up to an hour and a half maybe of actual work, and that could just all be on one piece of kit or across a couple of different pieces of kit. And I'll have a set pace that I'll stick to, so it'll be set percentage work. So at the moment, say I'm doing 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off for 30 rounds at a high power output on a row once a week. And then I'm doing, this week, I think I'm doing 5 sets of 8 minutes at 151 pace with a 2-minute rest, stuff like that, where it'll just be like, that's my pace. And I'll once I've completed that whole cycle, then I'll do the same thing, but I'll just knock up the speed a little bit and I'll just knock up the power output a little bit and just I'm quite scientific with stuff, and I'm a bit of a data whore in terms of I'll write stuff out and I'll be like, oh, I wonder how that'll work, and if it does, then I'll just repeat it a little bit harder.
Yeah, and I think that particularly in the context of lockdown and stuff, looking at those kind of more aerobic based interval style training is something that, like, everyone can do at home, instead of just going like, well, let's just go out and run 5k, or let's run for half an hour. Be like, okay, well, we know, like, just 5-6 minutes, take 2-3 minutes of rest, and then just repeat, and having that kind of element of being able to keep that higher level of intensity. Definitely.
I think you see a lot of people that are going out there and like trying to say smash a 5k as fast as they can, and say you're good at that and you're getting it done in around the 20-minute mark. Why not hold a 20-minute 5k pace for 6 1k intervals with a 1 or 2 minute rest in between, and then actually what you've done is the equivalent of 6k at that same pace, and then try and have another k, or go a little bit slower. And it's like, people just think that faster, and like, that's one thing, like with CrossFit, is like, obviously it's brought to light the value in intensity, right, which is invaluable. It's something that was missing in 95% of gym goers' daily training. What has happened now is, I think that a lot of people have gone completely that way, and they've forgotten about the long aerobic steady state stuff that actually is so valuable and so important. I'm boring, but from an athletic development point of view, but also from a recovery point of view, from a longevity point of view, from a mental strength point of view, which I think is an underlooked side of it as well. It's a real important part of training. So I can understand if you can only train for 45 minutes to an hour every day, then yeah, you're going to get more bang for your buck with the intensity side of things. But if you want to compete at these higher levels and you've got the time to do it, then banging yourself on a bike for an hour every day and then doing an hour's worth of lifting and gymnastics and all the other good stuff is gonna see you just as well.
Yeah, definitely. Even from a point of view of, like, the better your aerobic system is, the more volume you can just generally tolerate. And you, like, say, you don't get to the level of volume that, like, you will be able to endure without a good aerobic, like, say, good aerobic tolerance in that sense. And so it's just really a straight, it sort of serves many different purposes. And yes, intensity is important. Well, it's probably, I think, to be honest, people kind of often get caught up in a middle ground, in the sense that, like, absolutely. Even I was looking at one of the workouts that I will do tomorrow, that your guys, and it's like it might be something like 3 muscle ups, 6 dumbbell thrusters, 9 calorie bike. and then it's like 6 rounds of that, and there's like a 2-minute rest in between each round. And like the reality is, like 3-6-9, it takes less than a minute. And then, but if you're going for that idea of full intensity, like I hate that. That's yeah, that's what I like. The notion of anything under 3 minutes, like, well, to be honest, if it's under 7 minutes, I'm really don't like it, and would much rather see a 30-40 minute stint. But the anything like, it's just so effective. But then at the same,
that's because you understand what intensity is, right? So like, so many people would look at that and be like, and then what? Oh, is that it? Like, I'd look at that and think, fuck, that's gonna hurt. Like, that's gonna be horrible. That'll leave me on my ass for an hour afterwards, like gasping for air and rolling around in spit and vomit and all the other stuff. And you know that as well, because you understand that that is what intensity is. And that's when, you should only be sprinkling that on your training once, twice a week, maybe leading into a competition. That's when you start doing more of that sort of stuff. But somebody looks at that and goes, oh, that's easy. I'll just, that's not intensity. They're in that middle ground that you're talking about. And that's what I think the problem is that real intensity hurts.
Yeah.
Like it's intense.
Yeah. I think, like, say that such a workout like that is so clever, and it kind of, but then I think particularly for the average CrossFit goer, one of the things that I will have spoken about before is that, because the reality is we are just general public. We've got to go to work and we've got to be able to function, but then there still is an element of, okay, we might be a lot more undulating. We might have gone out and still enjoyed a beer more than maybe you or I would, but then at the same time, there's still an intention. And ask yourself, well, look at the workout in front of you and have an intention from the workout, in the sense of, okay, well, I'm going to pace this workout so that I hit every round, and I'm going to hit all the 20 wall balls unbroken, and I'm not going to compromise that. And there's still ways like that in which you can be really, really smart about your kind of program, the way you attack workouts, that kind of maybe isn't a full all-out blow, but then you're still getting some form of benefit from the program.
Absolutely. And that's where the beauty of having a coach or having a program or whatever comes into it. Like, I mean, if you're coaching a class in your CrossFit box, like, that's your duty of care, right?
Yeah.
We've written this workout because it's supposed to be leave you on your ass hanging intensity. We've written this workout because it's supposed to be heavy. And you always get people that like will overscale things and go too light, and they end up getting a 20-minute workout done in 7 minutes, and they haven't got what you wanted that workout to be. And the same thing where you've got people that are trying to RX Fran, even though they can only do 3 pull-ups, and 45 kilo thrusters is heavy for them, and it takes them 10-15 minutes. And you're like, okay, yeah, you might have done Fran, but you haven't done Fran.
Yeah.
Like, you'd have done a better workout with an empty barbell and ring rows, and doing it in 2.5 minutes and being left hanging out your hoop at the end of it. And it's like, that's understanding what the stimulus is supposed to give you, and understanding that actually, like, it's training, not competing. Like, nobody cares what you've got on the bar, nobody cares what, like, you're training for this stimulus, and if you get the right stimulus, you'll see results.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like nothing beats the intended stimulus. And that's something that, like, particularly no matter what gym you go to, no matter what program you're following, it's just be like, well, what should I be focusing on in this workout? And that's something that you have a right to ask. And to be honest, like, that can change, like say, just depending on how you feel, depending on what your day at work looks like. What the focus that I might have for it will be completely different for what you might have for it. I might look at a set of a workout which has 3 rounds of 50 wall balls in, and I'm going to be like, okay, well, my focus is this, and you'll be like, well, my focus is to do all 3 rounds of 50 unbroken, and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, so the point is, ask those questions as a listener, ask those questions to your coaches, for sure.
And they should know the answers, and if they don't, then you need to question that as well. I think that's part of the thing. Like, CrossFit gets a bit of a bad rep. Oh yeah, you only need to do a weekend course and all this sort of stuff. There are some amazing CrossFit gyms in this country with some absolutely fantastic CrossFit coaches at them. and there's a lot of people that think they're coaching CrossFit and think that they're programming CrossFit and are just chucking something on a whiteboard and off the seat of their pants, and they won't be able to answer those questions. But the fact that you're asking people to ask those questions shows that you're the right side of the field, right?
Yeah, we try.
Yeah.
I suppose the final thing that I would love to ask you about is, so you are owner of Catris Nutrition. That is, it seems to be kind of making quite a resurgence in terms of its kind of product development and stuff like that. Where did that originate from, and where's it at now?
So back when I wanted to be a doctor, so I got accepted to Oxford University and to Cardiff University to do medicine. I ended up staying in Cardiff because I had a rugby contract at the time, and I completely bottled it. I did a couple of less than 2 weeks, I want to say like 4 or 5 days worth of actual uni in Cardiff Uni, and I was just like, not for me. But I was always really into biochemistry, biology, physiology, all that sort of stuff. So I ended up doing a business degree in Cardiff Met and playing rugby and getting smashed for a couple of years and just enjoying myself, not knowing what I was going to do. At that time, I qualified as a PT, and I did a nutrition diploma alongside my degree just for my own further learning, because that's what I was quite interested in. And I was playing for UWIC, or Cardiff Met now, but was UWIC's first team when I was in my first year, which was pretty rare. And we were all training at 7 o'clock in the morning on a Monday, Wednesday, and a Friday. And we would be getting Dye Watts, with Dye Watts, and we were getting our protein shakes and everything. And I remember him sort of saying to people, like, I was quite small at the time, and I was still bulking up, I guess. And he was like, you need to be getting this supplement, and you need to be eating this much and that much. And I was like, you're telling these guys to buy these supplements, and we're eating tuna pasta and rice, like, and jacket potatoes, and living off beans and cheese. Like, we can't afford this sort of stuff. We're students, and it's taken away from our beer money. So I sort of thought, well, what's the solution here? So I went and found a protein manufacturer, and I thought, right, I'm going to cut out the middleman, and rather than us all going and buying Optimum Nutrition Gold Standard Whey or whatever that was costing us an arm and a leg, I'm just going to get generic tubs of, this is 80% protein, and I'm going to sell it to the boys, and I'm going to make a $5 a tub. And we went mental. Like, the boys, like, it was half the price of what they were paying elsewhere, because it didn't have any marketing, didn't have any VAT, it wasn't in the shops and all this other stuff. And then I did a mass gainer, and then and it got to the stage where I had a little generic sort of off the shelf. They had a brochure. I was like, yeah, we'll have a mass gainer. Yeah, we'll have one of them. There's no development at all. That's how it started. And then in 2012, when I had the eye socket fracture, and I sort of came into CrossFit, in fact, Andy Edwards spoke to me about it as well. And he said, I think he planted the seed that I think a CrossFit supplement would do well. And I was like, what, I'm a step ahead of you. And the money I got from my insurance payout from the eye socket, I put into research and development, and developed some new products, which were what turned out to be the original fuel and recoveries for Catris RX. And that was, late 2012, early 2013. And it's gone through a couple of redevelopments since then, trying to keep improving. And up to a point in sort of 2015, 16, it was really, really busy and selling like hotcakes. And we had an issue with the protein that we've got in the recovery is delactosed whey, hydrolyzed whey protein, which is quite rare because it mixes clear rather than like it's not like a milkshake. As you know, it's like it mixes like Lucozade, like squash. And it tastes, fruit. I've got some in here actually in a Robertson squash bottle, but that's some recovery. And it tastes like blackcurrant squash or tropical orange squash. And a Chinese company bought out Nestle at the time, and they were making baby formula, and they bought out the entire stock from this company that I was buying this protein from back in 2016, and I couldn't get any protein. And I was just like, they bought millions of pounds worth, and I was just like left on my arse, not being able to make any protein. And I basically had to sell all of the last stocks that we had and empty the shelves while I was setting up the gym with Ion. And I was just like, right, okay, we'll focus on that for now. And and let me know when I can get my hands on it again. And it wasn't until early last year that we were able to get it back going, but it was a slightly different blend, so we had to reformulate, and then we relaunched back in November, just before Christmas this year.
Amazing. And so what's the kind of plan? Are you just kind of going to keep it within the kind of the CrossFit sphere as such, or or are you just kind of, it's just there because as a side project at the moment?
Yeah, I think like it makes sense for me for it to be a CrossFit related product, because it's the sport that I'm in. It's where I've got the most influence, if you like, or whatever. But also for the fact that, CrossFit is not a massive market on the grand scheme of things, for the sports nutrition side of things. You look at, general gym goers, bodybuilders, rugby players, judo, MMA, whatever. But it's a plenty big enough market for me. And, I'd rather than me trying to take on every other company that is doing everything under the sun, I'd rather do something specific that is, the products are actually designed for specifically this sort of training and improvements in this sort of training, and have a relatively large piece of a small pie rather than a tiny piece of a huge pie.
And so what kind of products have you developed? I know you've got the ZMA as well, which is kind of raved about. Other than the protein.
Yeah, so we've got the fuel and the recovery version, 86.2 or whatever we're at now, where we've redeveloped things, and I think we've just got a real good sweet spot with both of those products at the moment, where the recovery is obviously a post-workout mix. Is clear, it's 1-to-1 carbs to protein, high standard whey protein isolate. There's creatine, there's glutamine, there's HMB, there's vitamin C, vitamins and minerals and electrolytes. So it's an all-encompassing recovery shake rather than just a protein shake. The fuel is a CrossFit specific, if you can say that, a sport specific, I should say, pre-workout, in terms of it's caffeine, beta-alanine, citrulline malate, taurine, and it's all things that are helping with oxygen flow, with oxygen transfer, with hydration, and with energy transfer. So you're not going to get pump, you're not going to get like the last thing you want is, like, if any of you have taken some of the old school NO Explode type pre-workouts and you get like a forearm pump that you would in Fran, it feels like your arms are going to explode. Well, you don't want that for CrossFit. It's the last thing you want. So it actually helps against that. Things like taurine and beta-alanine help prevent those things from happening, but give you a good energy kick as well. And then the ZMRX is a nighttime formula, which is not just a standard ZMA, which is zinc, magnesium, and B6. There's copper, there's valerian, there's ginkgo, theanine, NAC. So there's a lot of things that are actually helping you from a hormonal point of view in terms of reducing cortisol levels. So when you sleep, obviously, as you know, like the first few hours of sleep are basically bringing your body back down to homeostasis, and in terms of lowering cortisol levels, lowering stress levels, and sort of reacting to what you've had throughout that day. What this allows you to do is get to that homeostasis level quicker. So it does. People think that they're sleeping tablets because they do sleep better on them, but they're not. They're not actually going to make you sleep for longer. They're going to make your sleep more efficient.
Makes sense. That's interesting. I didn't realize that you'd had those extra ingredients in there, which certainly kind of makes it a slightly a different product that's in comparison to other similar products on the market, for sure. One of the things I will certainly just give opportunity to anyone to ask questions at the moment, but in terms of just to finish off, where I ask the same questions to each guest every week. So if you do have any questions just to finish, then please put them in the box whilst I'm asking these questions. They're all kind of centered around lockdown and all that kind of stuff, and staying with the isolation theme. And so, out of interest, if you were to have one meal for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the remainder of lockdown, what would that be?
Oh, am I an athlete or am I just wanting to eat food?
Whatever you choose.
Chicken fajitas, just so easy. Like, they just tick all the boxes. Easy to make, not too bad, and they taste so good.
I mean, fajitas for breakfast would be something special.
Yeah, I
The
wouldn't want to hang around with me too much.
yeah, yeah, for sure. What are you watching, or whether it's Netflix, Disney Plus, anything like that that you can recommend to everyone?
So I got Disney Plus on the pre-order, and I watched every single Marvel Cinematic Universe film in order, the way they were supposed to be watched, rather than the way that they were the order they were filmed. So it did 23 days, one new film every day for 23
Nice.
days, which was, at the time, we were supposed to be locked down for 3 weeks. So I thought that'll see me through the 3 weeks. That'll be perfect. So that was a cool little project that I enjoyed because I love those films. And at the moment, I don't watch a ton of TV, to be honest. I'm binge watching in the background when I'm working Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Nice, nice, class.
Easy to
The
watch.
Yeah, the next question is, apart from exercise, is there anything like slightly different in terms of this idea of self-care, keeping yourself sane? What are you kind of doing in that sense, or anything that you can potentially recommend to any of the listeners?
Yeah, so something that I'm doing since isolation, and it's something that I've 100% decided that I want to continue to do after isolation is done, is I'm going for a walk. I live right by Roath Park Lake anyway, those of Cardiff. So I'm going for a walk around Roath Park Lake, which is a really nice scenic walk with lots of ducks and geese and swans and stuff. And I go for a walk for an hour every single day, listening to either a podcast or an audiobook, or not listening to anything, and just relaxing for an hour. And it's something I've, even when it's been raining, I've gone out there, and just, it's something I've enjoyed massively. And it's something that for my own headspace, I've gone through 2 or 3 audiobooks a week for the last couple of weeks, which has been cool from a learning point of view. But it's also been just good to get outside, get a bit of fresh air, and just watch the world go by.
What's the most recent book you've listened to?
I'm in the middle of listening to The Brave Athlete
Nice.
by Simon Marshall and Leslie Patterson, which I don't know if you read it or have listened to it. It's a good book. Yeah, very impressed with it in terms of how it breaks down different sort of mental issues that athletes might have in terms of feeling fat or underperforming, or he looks better than me on Facebook and all that sort of stuff. It's quite interesting. What else did I listen to? The last book before that I listened to was a book called Profit First by Mike Michalowicz, which is a business book, but very good. Different sort of take on how to set up a business and accounting. So a bit eclectic. So I'll listen to stuff that interests me at the time.
Nice. And then the final question is, where can they find you in terms of potentially reaching out for further questions, further help, and all this kind of stuff?
So on Instagram, my name is Mike Kratos, so Mike Kratos. That's probably the easiest place to get me individually. And then through the athlete program, we are the athlete program on Instagram, or there's the athlete program Facebook page. And Kratos Nutrition is Kratos_nutrition on Instagram as well. So if you want to have a little look at the products or check out the website, then have a look on there.
Yeah, amazing. Well, I really appreciate you coming on and chatting to us today. It's been amazing, and to be honest, an hour and a quarter was just absolutely flown by.
It's been that long, right?
Yeah, so yeah, I'm really, really grateful for your time today. For those
No problem at all. Thanks for having me.
For those that are listening live, I hope you've kind of enjoyed that. I will be back next Monday, where I am speaking to Oliver Lamb-Watson, who is a Team GB fencer. He is a fencer who is actually disabled, and he has he's built up a profile on YouTube. He's done a TEDx talk, and is doing a lot of work in kind of challenging disability stereotypes, and then obviously competing at a Team GB level despite having a disability. So tune in for that. I'm really looking forward to that. But other than that, I will see you next week.